All right, you guys, we're going to be talking about settings in this particular part of the course. So let's go up to our top right. And we're going to look at our settings icon in FreeShow. All right. And in FreeShow, we've got all kinds of settings. You'll see the list of the different things you can change in the settings on the left side there. And then in the middle here, you'll see all the content for that particular setting. Now, notice on the bottom right, there are some other options for you in this 1.4.5 and later versions. You'll see these additional options as well. All right. So you can change your language. You can disable labels. You can do all kinds of cool things here with your projects. You can set the default project name, like the way that it looks. You can make it have month, day, year, or you can maybe make it say year, month, day, for example. You just rearrange what this looks like. You just simply click in there and start manipulating it. All right. You can show the projects list on startup. All right. So you can click this and it'll automatically show your projects when you first open up FreeShow instead of just having the most recently used items in there. All right. And then the general, it's got to activate your output screen on startup, hide your cursor in output. This is one that I actually have activated so that if my mouse or my cursor accidentally drifts into the screen for my show, it doesn't distract people. That's the only reason I've got that on. All right. And then you can clear your media when finished in this program or in FreeShow. And then we've got the slides. So capitalized words are default here. And then you got transparent slide preview. You can actually turn that on if you wanted to. And then the high contrast group colors, I've activated that because it just allows you to show your the breakouts for your groups for songs, right? So verses, verse 1, verse 2, bridges and things like that. Those I've got them set to be high contrast so I can see them, and any volunteer that's maybe on your team can see them a lot easier that way as well. So I recommend turning that on. And then play slides with number keys. I have that off. And then auto shortcuts to first letter in the text. I have that off as well, but certainly it's an option. Now, if we go to the bottom right here under the general still, but you can manage your groups. Now, this is what I talked about earlier when we talked about the high contrast group colors. This is what we've got here. And you can assign different letters to each part. So I've got B assigned to the bridge, C to the chorus, and you can just click in there and it'll automatically ask you to type in what you want it to be. So if I click on that to assign a shortcut, I can do that. Okay. I can just close this out because I'm not going to assign one, but that's managing groups. Let me go back in there just to make sure. And over here, you can assign certain templates to certain groups, right? So remember, we talked about how important templates were. We haven't dove into them yet, but you can assign templates to show up every time you play the chorus. It's going to look a certain way. It's going to be all bold text or all bold font with only one line per slide or something along those lines. That's what you can do with your template or something along those lines, right? So that's something that's kind of cool, kind of fun, but you can change that. Okay. You can change which each of these look like from there. I don't worry about that at all. So from a beginner level, you don't have to worry about that at all either. And then it's got group numbers here. That's automatically on as well. All right. So let's go out and let's go to manage metadata. And so managing metadata, this allows you to see here. So if I go to number, title, you can make it be visible or invisible. So when you're importing songs, or if you are actually creating shows that are song lyrics, you can input all this type of stuff. And maybe there's something here. Maybe you say, okay, I don't need to know the key, or maybe I don't need to know the copyright date. You can make that not be there in terms of managing its visibility and your willingness or ability to add that particular setting into your show. Okay. So this is the metadata that would come with each show. And then we go down one more, and it's the managing your icons, right? So you can import custom icons. Maybe your church has made some particular theme icons that you like. You can import those. They got to be SVG files as well. And you can see the different ones here that are already active. So if we click on that one, it'll deactivate it and they'll turn gray. All right. So you can actually activate or deactivate different icons that will usually have to do with labeling your categories or other features and facets in FreeShow as you play around with it. All right. And then managing your colors. This one has to do with your color palette in the program has a default. So all these are defaults. Okay. You can't change these that are already there. but you can add a new color if you wanted to. So maybe your church has some custom colors, right? So you can actually go in here and you can add a new color. You can change it to where if you got the code for RGB or HSL or the hex code, you can type that in specifically and then you can save that, right? So you might click on this one. That might be, let's see, I might make mine be this rich red color and I can hit enter and it's locked in now. So every time I go to a color palette in FreeShow to change the color of my text or change the color of my background, I can have an option that automatically saves this particular color in the settings. So I can actually select it really quick and easy. Okay. Same way with gradients. You can add different gradients. There's some default ones at the top, and then all the ones you've added are at the bottom, and you can always trash any of the ones that you've added. All right. Same way, adding the color, but this time it's a gradient. So it's going to be multiple colors, usually two to four, sometimes just two or three, but this is where you would change that and you'll see the gradation here. You can make it linear, you can make it radial. You can even change, if it is linear, you can change the angle. So if you want it to be a up and down, I would say like a vertical gradient where it gets light to dark from top to bottom, you can change that here. All right. You can make this be whatever number you want though. So you might want it to be at a different angle, right? So slightly off skew. You can do that as well, all right, from here. And so you can adjust your colors that are default into your color palette whenever you're making changes to text and things like that, all from this general tab. Now we're going to shift to the next option called outputs. All right. Outputs are unique and powerful in FreeShow because this is one of the things I loved the most when I switched over to FreeShow was that I can have multiple outputs that were customized or uniquely customized. And so you can enable it. First of all, you can enable an output, but down at the bottom, you have to add them, right? So I've got a primary, and I think that's going to be a default one. I've added one called practical camera, and I've also added one called live stream. All right. And then I've got a stage output here. If you were to add one, you click the add button at the bottom and you'll see the option to say, is it a normal output or is it a stage output? The reason that's important is because those things are laid out very differently. Remember when we talked about the top three in your setting when you're doing your show? The stage is a separate layout feature than any other part of the program. And so if it's a stage layout, our stage output is going to have a unique layout that you can use for it. If it's a normal output, and that would involve even live stream, that would involve your primary in-house LED screens, whatever it is you've got, TV monitors, these would be normal outputs and you would select that. All right. Once you get there, it's going to ask you to dictate the style, which we'll talk about in the next tab here. But also it's going to ask you to dictate what the output screen resolution is as well. Okay, so you can dictate that size. If it's something that's unique, you can automatically put that in there, but it also will scale automatically for you. And then you got the options for always on top. That means that this particular presentation, right? So when you're sending out your show, it will always be on top of whatever's on that computer screen or page, I guess you could say. It'll always be on top. And that's something I recommend you always have on. And then the kiosk mode is an optional thing. It allows you to block off anything from being used on that computer except FreeShow. All right. NDI mode is enabled on this particular output. And I'm actually looking at my live stream. So my NDI is on and the audio for NDI is on as well. So that means I can send audio signal from FreeShow into a program like OBS, which is what I like to do as well. Okay. And then the frame rate, this has to do with your video feed in terms of what, like, for example, if I'm using OBS or you're using some other video streaming program, then you want to make this match. So whatever your video streaming program is using, you want to make this be that number as well. And then transparent is an option here. And the transparent has to do with, is the background supposed to be invisible? And for a live stream, the answer is yes. So you got that. I've got mine checked on to where it's blue because, and yours might be pink, right? By default, we'll talk about how I changed my theme, which is another tab here, but it's on. And that means that I can play a video of my service. So I might show the pastor or the speaker or the worship team or whoever it is in the background because I've got a transparent background and I can make that video feed show up through OBS. Okay. And then I'll send it out to my live stream and my words will be at the bottom is what I like to do. And then I'll have my video behind the words and you can see the people speaking and you can see the verse they're reading, or you can see the song they're singing below. And then this invisible window option is powerful because what it allows you to do is it allows you to set up this window, this output without having to point it to a particular screen connected to your computer. So invisible window simply means it's not an HDMI or SDI output from your computer. It's literally an invisible window. It's not going to any specific device because I'm actually using NDI, which is a wireless protocol. It's a network device interface is what it stands for. It allows you to send a signal over your network. So as long as your computer is connected through Ethernet cord or Wi-Fi, it can send a signal to any other device that's connected through Ethernet cord or Wi-Fi on the same network. And when I have invisible window on, it means I don't have to bog down my computer with another output to try to plug into it. It'll literally just be completely invisible to my computer, except when I'm sending out a signal to NDI. And whatever program I'm using on NDI will be able to see this NDI signal, but my computer doesn't have to say, okay, it needs to go and point to this HDMI output. Okay. That is the outputs page. Let's go over to our styles page. And the styles are fun because the styles are directly connected to your templates. Okay. They have a lot to do with the look of your show. If you remember when we were in our outputs, it had this option called use a style. And I've got a few of them here that I've got. And when we go back into our style section, you'll see that they all correlate to what I have down at the bottom. And you would add a style just like you would add an output. Down at the bottom, you would click add. All right. And it gives you a default name. Default 2 is what mine is called. And I can go into here and I can keep it default 2, but I also can call it something else. I'm going to call it training for beginners. I'm going to just call it beginner training. All right. And I hit enter, it locks it in. And now I got an option to change the background color of my particular output. So right now my background color is black. Okay, this is the default background color. That is what I would recommend most churches and ministries do. So as you get started with this, I would just keep it black, but you can change that to any color you want. Okay, and that just changes when you take all the slides and information off the screen. Whatever this color is what's going to be showing up on your projector or on your TV or on your LED screen. All right. Background media, that's an option as well. Some people like to add their logo there. Whatever you do, you want to make sure to format it for the size of your screen because however it's formatted, that's how big it'll be on the screen. All right. And then transitions, you can change your transitions type. You can change the text transition and the media transitions separately. If you do text transitions, you'll see here, for me, I've got my in and out set to, or defaults to fade. You can turn it to where it doesn't do any of that and just is none is what I would recommend. And then for your media, you can keep that on fade as that works pretty good. And you can change the duration. You can make it be a second. I've got mine at 0.8 seconds and I got the easing. This is just the way in which it shows up. I would keep it at flow by default. That's the most seamless way to do it. All right. And then the aspect ratio, this has to do with what style or what is the aspect ratio of this style, right? Every screen can be unique and you can literally set a custom value for your current screen that you're using this on. Maybe you got a 4:3 screen or an extra wide 21:9 screen. You can do that here. So FreeShow gives you the complete room or the room to completely customize what your show looks like. All right. In terms of how big or big or small your screen is, you can customize it here. Here's a square screen, for example, that you can set it to. All right. I'm keeping mine at 16:9 is that's going to be the most general. If you're using a regular TV, like a 4K TV or anything like that, 16:9 is going to be the ratio that you want to use. All right. Active layers. This has to do with showing what on your show. So if you want to disable the background, you can disable the background. If you're trying to send this out to a live stream, I highly recommend you disable the background so that people can still see the camera feed in OBS or whatever program you're using that allows you to send that signal out. Slides is one that if you want to show the words to your lyrics and your scriptures, you want to keep that active, right? So you can disable it or enable it, right? And then overlays the same way. That has to do with like logos. You maybe want to put a QR code that pops out and then you can make it go away. If you want to keep that active and available, you want to make sure to have this active, okay? So this is the active layers. In my background, I can turn it back on for now, but if you're using this for a live stream, that needs to be off. And then max lines per text box. This has to do with if you have a song that has 8 lines of text in it, okay? This setting will allow you to say, hey, whenever we're showing our song, no matter how many lines of text there are on this slide, we only want to show 2 at a time. And that streamlines your flow of your presentation to where people in the audience can only see 2 lines at a time, right? This could be helpful if you're doing a live stream and you want your lower thirds to be customized that way. But even in-house, this is a really cool feature. As a beginner, it's not a big deal, but it's something that as you develop and get comfortable with the program, you may want to set this up to be that way. Or you can just keep it at all lines, okay? But this is a way to alleviate a lot of frustration from editing, where you don't have to edit a lot of your slides. If you're importing them from somewhere else, they may be a little bit discombobulated. This will allow you to keep them in order without even having to worry about trying to re-edit everything. It'll do it for you, okay? And then you can set a custom value here. Maybe you say, I want it to be 5 lines per that's not listed here. You can do that down there as well. Override slide with a template, and then override scripture with a template. This is a very important feature in FreeShow because, as I said before, templates are foundational. And then it starts with your style. So you start with a template at the foundation, you put on top of that your style. And the reason that's important is because for this particular this particular style, I might say, I want to use the big, bold, regular lyrics, right? This is just regular scripture, not scripture, but non-scripture text. Okay, so this is that. All right. So I can close that and that locks in, big and bold. But for scriptures, I want to use something similar, but I wanted to make sure it has the reference. So you need to find big and bold for scriptures. I got one here that says big, bold with scripture. And then you also can scroll through and you might find other ones that you like as well, right? So the default ones, this is a scripture that's got like a little bit of a black box and it says meta. That stands for the metadata from the actual verse reference and the book of the Bible and all those kind of things. That's what that would represent. You might want to show in your ministry, you might want to have 2 books of the Bible at the same time. You can set that here. Okay. And that would be with that defaults too, but you just got to make sure you're showing 2 Bibles at the same time. For now, we'll do scripture big. Okay. I got one I call it scripture big. Yours may have a different default. You can pick that. And I'm going to pick this one here and I'm going to scroll back up and I'll just hit close. All right. Now, real quick, you got translations down here. So this is the default for one translation. If I click this, I can make a new default if I have a translation of 2 different Bibles at the same time. So maybe I've got the French and the English Bible, or maybe I have something else different. You can do that with this particular program. All right. So we can go ahead and close that. And then down at the bottom, you don't have to worry about this, but it has some defaults. So display metadata. I've got it set on no slides. You can set it to be on the last slide, the first slide. And this has to do with that information we talked about, right? So the artist and the song title and all those kind of things, you can make that be available on all slides, the first and last, or any combination of the 2. And I've got mine set to none. And then your message template, this is literally a way for you to send messages to your congregation for them to read. And it's defaulting to this one right here that says message, and it's just got it right up there at the top. All right. So if you needed to make a special announcement that says maybe someone's lights are on, you can put that message up in this particular piece right there, and it'll show up at the top of the screen. That's how it'll look. That's the template for it that is going to display it as. All right. And that is your styles. And like I said, you can always add more styles. I've got quite a few of them here. You might have a few of them as well. And you can customize these to look however you want. You want the text to be big on one, but you want the text to be small and trendy on another one. That's where you would make a different style, because each style would have its own set of templates. All right. The next option we have here, very powerful feature in FreeShow, involves your connections. Now, one of the big it's not a selling point because FreeShow is free, but one of the big points of FreeShow that give it an advantage over other programs is that with FreeShow, you can control your show remotely very, very easily, okay, by activating this particular option for remote show. And you can just scan this QR code with your phone. And if I go to my phone real quick and I scan that, it pops up IP address that's on my network. So any computer that's on your network or devices on your network, you will be able to use that. And then it gives you an option down there that says a passcode. Okay. And your passcode option has to do with what they would need to put in order to get access to that particular page. All right. When they get there, they'll be greeted with a list of different things. So I've got my phone showing up here, accessing FreeShow remotely. So I could change different settings. So let me go, I'm going to close this out. And I'll let you see. So I can bring up 1 Kings chapter 17. All right. And I'm going to click on that. You notice up here on the right, 1 Kings chapter 17 shows up. I controlled that from my phone. All right. Let me keep it back up. Let me show you something else. So I can actually go to another verse. This is verse 6. I'm gonna go to verse 9 and see how it changed. And I'm controlling all that from my show. Very simple, very easy. This is something that maybe your pastor wants to have, or maybe you as a media volunteer, a leader of the media team, you want to have access to control the shows remotely as needed. And you can do all kinds of things in this program or this. You can change the view of it. Let me pull it in just a little bit. You can go to different Bibles and actually pull up verses of the Bible from here. You can't see that too well, but you can see there. And then you can also go to your different projects, and you can also go to your live show. All right. So remote show is really cool. The other option you have is stage show. Okay. Now the stage show has to do with, remember we talked about the stage layout or the stage output. You could make a stage output in this. When somebody scans this, they'll be able to see that on their phone or their tablet or their other computer, because you can actually share this code as well. This is the actual IP address that you're sending them. This is on my network. Your network will be different. Okay. Same way for control show. It'll look like a little remote control with arrow keys. You can actually control the show real simply by going to the next slide and so forth and so on. And then the output show. This option is very similar to the others. When you click it, it takes you to a screen that shows whatever the show looks like. All right. So it's a very cool connection page that's feature packed. Down below is API. The last one here is API. And this one has to do with WebSockets, REST, OSC, and Companion. If your ministry uses Bitfocus Companion, you want to always have this on. And if you notice, I keep mine on at all times because I control FreeShow with Bitfocus Companion on my tablet here. Okay. And then if you have Planning Center, you can connect that to FreeShow, and then Chums as well, which are church management programs. And those allow you to sync up song lyrics and organizing your services and things like that. All those things can be connected from this particular page on connections. All right. Let's go into our files. This files page is something that's important for you to understand, but it's not going to be something that's going to hold you back at the very beginning, but it's helpful for you to know what's going on. So auto save, I've got mine set to every 15 minutes, and then auto backup is set to daily. You want to set that to whatever works best for you and your ministry. And then it shows you where that information is going to be where it's going to be saved, not shared, but it's going to be in a data location. So here I've got mine set in my documents folder. And then it says my shows. Where will my shows be saved? In my documents folder, in that same FreeShow folder, I made a folder called shows, or there's a folder here called shows. Yours probably defaults the same way, but you can always change that. You might want to go to a hard drive somewhere that's completely separate. You can mobily take it with you if you need to. All right. And then it says save user settings at the data location. So your settings can be saved, which I recommend you keep on if it's not already. Turn it on. And that way you can save all your settings for FreeShow as well. And then down here, if you need to sync up with the cloud, and usually that's important if you have more than one computer that you're using FreeShow with, you're going to probably want to sync it up with the cloud. And this is going to use Google API keys to do so. All right. There's a helpful guide here that takes you directly to the FreeShow website. You click that. It's going to give you step by step how to get your FreeShow synced up with the cloud using Google APIs. And all you would do is enable the uploading of the data, and then it'll give you'll be able to create your own personal key. And you'll be able to use that to be able to connect both computers to share data, and they'll be synced up online. Okay. And then down here, you can back up everything if you need to, for whatever reason. Maybe you're getting a new computer for the ministry. You can back up everything and it'll save it in a certain place. And then you can restore from that same file if you need to on a new computer. Okay. So that's here under files. The themes, this is where yours is going to look a little bit different than mine's currently. You probably have the default theme set up right now, which is the gray with the pink highlights. I like the blue highlights. You may want the orange highlights or whatever it is, but you also can add your own layout or theme, I guess you could call it, and it'll dictate. You'll be able to pick your colors for each of these particular sections, and you can still even customize the ones that are already there. All right. And so those are options for you as well. And then under the other tab, this has to do with more auto updates. This has so auto updates has to do not just with backing. It's not backing up, but it has to do with updating FreeShow. If you are using this in a capacity that is important for the end user or the audience, I would keep this off. Okay. Now, I say keep it off. It doesn't mean I don't want you to update FreeShow. It simply means I want you to control when FreeShow updates. Now, the reason I say that is because with any program, I don't care if it's Apple computer program, operating system, I don't want to update it automatically. I want to know what that update entailed. Are there any bugs with it? Are users complaining about it? What are the glitches? Because that could have a direct impact on me in the way that I use FreeShow, and I don't want it to impact that. So as long as your current version of FreeShow is stable, you're good. But if you get a new version and it may have one thing in it that's unique that makes it change what you do in your regular workflow and you're not prepared for it, that's going to be a bad setup. All right. So you don't want to have that on. And then you can always still update manually. All right. And then alert when a new update is available. This is the one I keep on because it lets me know, oh, there is a new version. I'll get to it when I have time. And then alert when a new beta version. This is a fun feature of FreeShow that I don't know what you'll find on a lot of different programs, but I love it because what it does is it gives you access to see and use the beta version of FreeShow when it's created. And the developer team is excellent at making updates regularly. Now, I say excellent. I think that's a great thing because what it means is this program is growing, it's developing, it's getting better. It's not getting stale, it's not dying. Like some of the programs I've used in the past, there were years between updates, and not to say that the program wasn't stable, but when there was something that became unstable because maybe my computer got updated and it didn't play well with that older program, there needed to be an update and there wasn't. All right. So that's important in FreeShow that you can actually activate. I've got mine set to notify me of both regular and beta updates because I want to know about both. And then enable close confirmation pop-up, disable hardware acceleration. If you turn that on, that means your computer will not use any hardware to process FreeShow. I don't recommend you turn that on. I would keep it off because you want to have your processor running to control and to help make sure FreeShow runs smoothly. All right. And then you can duplicate or delete duplicated shows. You can bundle all your media files and you can export a usage log if you need to. That has more to do with troubleshooting. And then the other two have more to do with like cleanup. Okay. And then down here in the bottom right, you can open different folders like your cache and app data and user data and things like that. All right. Now, this is the settings in the settings icon. But if you go to the top, there are more settings. All right. So under FreeShow, not much here. This is an Apple device, so it's not much there. But under File, this is where you can save, you can import, and you can export and or quit the whole program. Now, when it comes to saving, that just saves the program. You'll see on the bottom right down there, it'll say it's saving, all right, or that it's saved. And that's a manual save. Instead of waiting for the auto save, you can do it that way. And then the import. We'll get into this more, but this is where you can import programs from or files from your other programs that you're coming from. Very important feature. All right. And we got the file export. All right. And so export allows you to export your current project, show, or all of your shows. Okay. Kind of like what we talked about when you do all shows, that has more to do with like backing up everything or what we saw in the files section here when we went there. There was this option to back up everything. That one just gives you an option to actually back up just your shows. All right. So file, export, and then we got the quit. But then in the edit, we can do or undo, redo, history, and then view. Now, view is unique because what view does, let's go out back into our main show, and I'll give you an idea. And this is presentation. So this is a presentation. This is default of what FreeShow looks like. All right. Now, if you were to go back up there to that view option and I say toggle focus mode, check out what happens. So now it's taking everything that I had in my project and it's lining it up. Okay. And it just puts it all in the middle. So I can scroll through and go through my entire show and see every single slide right in the middle. Right. Now, if I go back, let's counter that. And I'll go back to the view and I toggle focus mode again. All right. And I go to understanding actions, it's just those slides, right? So this is more like for editing. It's not for the day of the service or the meeting. I go to countdown loop show. You'll see the countdown loop. This is for FreeShow Friday. No, actually, this is just a made up one. This is not Free Show Friday. This is just a bunch of, those would be flyers for you guys or something like that you might have upcoming events. This is a song, for example, right? And this is a set of scriptures. And this is an example of another project I'm working on. But this is just one set of scriptures here. That's what toggle focus mode does. It allows you to toggle between, this is kind of like edit mode that it defaults to. And then if you go and then pay attention to our icons down at the bottom here. I'm gonna pull this up just so you can see what happens in focus mode. So I'll go to view and go to focus mode. Those turn into just little icons. All right. So notice here, you don't see the words that say shows and overlays and audio and scriptures. It just has a little icon because this is the focus mode. This is what you will probably want to switch to in the middle of service. And your volunteer, whoever it is, they would just simply click and arrow through the slides, and they would just arrow through, and you'll see that I'm going through it here. And you'll see the entirety here. This is a preview of it. I just click on that preview window and it pops up. All right. To just let me see it. Okay. And then you can go through your show, and the person that's running the show, they don't have to do anything special. They can just go through the entire show, and they can go down, and it takes them automatically to the next particular show. All right. And they can see what's coming up. They can scroll through and say, oh, that's coming up. I see how many more slides I've got next, and they can go through it. All right. And vice versa. So that is the fullness of your settings in FreeShow. And then there's this help one as well. This one takes you to documentation, and then a quick start guide kind of walks you through some things in FreeShow as well. So hopefully you found this helpful. This is literally the beginner's guide. So I wanted you to understand what this whole thing was about in terms of your settings, because you might run into an issue and you want to go to a certain thing to fix it. Hopefully this will help jog your memory, and put that nugget in your mind and say, oh yeah, there is a setting for that in FreeShow. Let me find it. All right. So stay tuned for the next lesson in this course. I can't wait to see you there.